Welcome to Time for the Soul. My name is Reverend Maba Jonas. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the assistant chaplain in the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life. And I'm here today with Kathy Schnurr. Kathy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, I'm Kathy Schnurr. I serve as the chaplain. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm excited to be here, Maba.
Me too. I'm glad you're here. So today we thought we would have a conversation about our work and chaplaincy and just kind of helping people understand the scope of what we do, why we are offering things like this, Time for the Soul, and what ways that students can and faculty and staff can connect with our office. So what is a chaplain?
Well, I think that's such a hard question to answer. So the most fundamental response that I have to that question is a chaplain is a religious or spiritual leader for a secular community. And it's not always technically true that communities are secular, right? But a chaplain brings religious or spiritual leadership to maybe an institutional community, I guess is a better way to frame it. So chaplains are in colleges and universities, hospitals and prisons, and other kinds of schools, and chaplains are turning up in industry and in corporations. And so yeah, that's the most fundamental definition of a chaplain. What do you have to say about it?
Yeah, in my denomination, we call it specialized ministry, right? So basically anyone who serves a community that's not a church. And that can be any of the places that you mentioned, right? Sports teams have chaplains. The United States Congress has a chaplain, right?
Right.
There are chaplains who are people that can but we do try to do similar things, right, to a spiritual leader. We try to build community, provide spiritual, ethical, and moral support. And that can be for the whole community, or can be individually in times of crisis, or in times of celebration and joy.
Yeah, great. We have lots of friends who are chaplains who have also put forward lots of different definitions or different ways to describe chaplaincy. And because I can't remember who said what, I don't want to attribute something incorrectly, but something that I've heard as a description of a chaplain, I think I first heard it, I will give this attribute. I think I first heard it from our friend Sharon Kugler, who's the university chaplain at Yale, who was at Hopkins for a long time before she went to Yale. She's described chaplaincy as the raw nerve that's exposed to the community, as a person who will show up and sit down right in the middle of a messy situation and be present to whatever's happening in the messiness. So those are some of the descriptions of chaplaincy that I've heard as well.
Yeah.
What do you think, how do you think chaplaincy shows up at Hopkins, Maba? I've been here a long time, so I have lots of thoughts on it, but you've been here, is this your fourth year?
Yes.
So I'm curious from your perspective, how you think chaplaincy shows up at Hopkins.
So Hopkins is a unique place. Unlike many of our peer institutions, it was not founded as a religious institution first. It was founded as a secular institution. And the hospital and the medical sciences were founded alongside of it. And so it definitely has that secular feel. And of course, Johns Hopkins himself was a Quaker, which is a community of faith that does not recognize or uphold any particular minister or leader or pastor in the similar way that other or that Christian denominations do. And so it's a unique opportunity, I think, compared to some other institutions where they've kind of had to move away from their Christian roots in order to become more pluralistic, more multi-faith, more inclusive. Hopkins kind of started out in that way of embracing very much the scientific and ethical and more sort of broad, explorative side of chaplaincy, which is certainly a lot of what we love to do. And then we found that there were people and students and faculty and staff members who uh, do identify very closely with a particular religion or as people of faith. And so now, us sitting within student affairs, we seek to help support those who maybe otherwise wouldn't have opportunities to fully practice their faith um, in an institution like this. So I like to think of Hopkins as we kind of work backwards from a lot of the ways we learn how to chaplain, where you're a lot of chaplains at schools are reaching out and we're sort of pulling in, you know, drawing in and making folks aware that we're available to help support their religious paths or spiritual paths, and also that we are attempting to be as inclusive as possible in supporting those identities.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, very much. I really love hearing you talk about it because I share all those same observations of chaplaincy at Hopkins. I think about, and you've heard me talk about this so many times, but I think about the history of student affairs at Hopkins and how proud I am that it really is rooted in the work of the chaplain's office from an earlier time, and how important that is to me that we recall that, right, that we recall that our work really is expansive, and sometimes it's easy to forget that religious and spiritual practices and religious and spiritual convictions and commitments aren't really narrow, but they're really broad, and they really impact the whole of our lives. And so and I think student affairs as a discipline really tries to impact the whole of the lives of our students. And so it's a really interesting and proud space for me that we hold historically for our institution. What do you think? Well, I want to know what led you to chaplaincy.
That's a great question. So I've always been attracted to religion and multi-faith approaches to the study of religion. I was a practicing Buddhist for a while. I was an atheist for a while. I, particularly in college, explored a lot of different areas. I also grew up in both the Catholic and the Quaker churches, so very different ends of the Christian spectrum. And so I've been, and I've spent some time in India and Nepal and studied many of the Dharmic traditions as well, which I absolutely love and find incredibly enriching and fascinating. And so when it came time to pursue a career, and I actually attended seminary, I knew that I did not want to serve within a church. That wasn't where anybody that I knew was. And though I admire my colleagues and friends who are doing amazing work, and particularly in areas of social justice and activism and engagement within their own church communities, that was not a place where I found myself. Wasn't a place where I was raised or that I felt I was being called. And so the school, I worked in both hospital chaplaincy and now in high school chaplaincy, and now college university chaplaincy. So I've always kind of explored the areas. I do know a prison chaplain, and my grandfather was actually not only an Army chaplain for his entire career, but then after he retired, he was a prison chaplain. And God love him, that is very challenging work. And I do love the idea of exploring that someday. But for now, I'm very happy in my work working with students. And I also think for me, college was a time where I was able to explore spirituality for myself for the first time. I wasn't, not that I wasn't open to that, and that my parents weren't encouraging of me to explore different religions as I was growing up. But there was a broad, sort of world open to me when I went to college, because you have an opportunity to meet people from all different backgrounds, all different places. And I began to practice, different and experience different religious rituals and traditions and worship services. And so that felt like an exciting time to find a spiritual path, and I wanted to help others do the same. What about you? What brought you to chaplaincy?
I came to chaplaincy, I was involved in chaplaincy when I was a college student, and it was a very meaningful time for me to be involved in religious life on my campus, and I found lots of community there. It was a place through which I could engage in social justice work, where I was able to really explore questions of meaning and purpose, but also really had some good friendships that a couple of whom I still maintain, not as closely as we all would wish, but yes. And so I think the other part of my path to chaplaincy is that I've always loved the human story, and the human condition is something that's been really interesting to me. And so being with people and engaging with people is something that I find really important work. I think it's the only way that we are really going to heal whatever needs healing, if it's interpersonal relationships, if it's cultural chasms that need healing, if it's global problems, if all the things that we need to tend to. I think we need to do it in relationship to one another, and with one another as the means through which we're going to do this work together. I worked in campus ministry for a couple of years when I finished college, and then I left that work to come to Baltimore, and I worked in human services. I took care of people with HIV disease. I worked doing some housing and support services for people who were homeless, worked in the soup kitchen for a few years. And I really got a chance to get to know Baltimore and to get to love Baltimore and to get to see that part of the human story, which gave me a deep appreciation for what it really means to be a person, and how we are all sort of some of the fundamentals of humanity that we share: the need to belong, the need to be able to offer something to our communities, the need to be able to depend on one another, the importance of celebrating with one another, and also the importance of remembering one another, remembering significant events together, but also remembering one another's lives. And so those are some of the things that have brought me to chaplaincy. And I am especially grateful to be at Hopkins in chaplaincy, because I think that the community at Hopkins really embraces curiosity and really is very outward focused. Our students care very much about positively impacting the world that they're a part of and the world that they're going to shape, and they're going to be in charge of us sooner rather than later in lots of different ways. And I'm really honored to get to have a chance to be with them as they are themselves shaping our campus community, but also growing and learning and taking on the values that they really are claiming as their own. And I'm proud of our students. I'm proud of what they value. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Absolutely. So speaking of, struggle and especially, it reminds me just of how these times in particular and how strange and unusual they are, and also this cultural moment. And I'm curious what you think chaplaincy has to offer during these times in particular.
Yeah, I think I have, as with many things, I have lots of thoughts. I think one of the things that chaplaincy offers, and the opportunity for for religious and spiritual engagement offers is a chance to really inspire one another and a chance to build relationships with one another, so that we can learn about each other and learn about what we need and what we need to champion for one another. I think the other, so we can provide a space that really helps us dig deep into our convictions and our commitments and helps us find ways to live those out in the world that match our own sensibilities and our own skills. I think the other thing that chaplaincy can offer is space for renewal and respite. The work that we need to be doing in this world to bring justice where justice needs to arrive it's enormous. There's so much of it to be done. And it's super important, I think, that as chaplains that we're able to remind people that that we are with them when they are stepping forward and working hard, and that we are also interested in helping them find places to rest and find renewal to continue the work together. So how about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that I think chaplains and, looking for the spirit and that opportunity has to offer is just stepping outside the kind of the norm, the chaos um, of our current experience, where everything is sort of vying for our attention, right? I notice that on Instagram and Facebook and the news and the media, it's and television, right? It's all just trying to grab at our attention, and I think one of the things that I think we try to offer is an opportunity to pause, to step back, to kind of take a breath and move into our own sort of sense of connection to, yes, that which is larger than ourselves, but also to one another, right? That the human experience and the ways in which we can find empathy and really not be distracted by these stories of the pain and the suffering that people are having in the world, as a way of kind of trying to inundate us with the sort of horror of those stories, but to actually reflect on, wow, that's a person, those are people, those are human beings just like me, and seeking that opportunity for empathy and for pausing and reflecting, I think is really important, because it's one of the ways that we find love, right? That we find and I guess the divine in the world, and that sense of you know something that you know that I believe that in my own theology, that we are called to love one another, right? And so sometimes I think that when we read and see all of this information, it's actually pulling us farther apart than bringing us closer together. And so I think in particular at a place and a community like Hopkins, it's helpful to continue to hear these stories. You talked about the story of the human experience, and I hope that we can help our students find the humanity in each other and in hearing the stories of difference and of the similarities from one another. So yeah, hopefully we can do that.
That's great. You've heard me say this. As chaplains, we traffic in hope, but we also know that these are difficult and isolating times, and so sometimes I think we find ourselves in circumstances where asking how's everybody doing isn't really a very helpful question to be asking.
Right.
But I think another thing that we try to traffic in is honesty. And so I think one of the things that we get to bring to our community is the space to honestly say that sometimes it's hard to find hope. You know, of course we know it's there somewhere, but sometimes it's hard to see it. And also the space to just say the pain and the despair or the misery is real. And it is real. And we acknowledge that, and we are present to that, and we believe that. We believe it. When we hear it, we believe it. So I think there's I think that is also part of what we get to bring our community, this this honesty, and then this sort of pursuit of hope. So yeah,
Absolutely. It's okay not to be okay.
it's
And we're
definitely,
okay with that.
yeah,
As they say in my community, all of you is welcome.
that's right.
We really do mean that.
Every part of you is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
So, where are you finding joy these days?
So I'm finding joy in my almost 7-month-old son.
I'm so eager to meet this little boy.
He was born right at the beginning of the pandemic, and so I can count the days of quarantine by his age, which is kind of a remarkable way to come into the universe, I'm discovering. And he doesn't know anything else, so he's endlessly curious about the world, and has unlimited fascination with new people because he doesn't see very many of them who are not on a screen. And yeah, he is just a bundle of joy, literally. So
Awesome.
that's bringing me joy right now. How about you?
Well, this is a season of celebrating life in my family. There are a lot of birthdays that land in the fall, in September and October, and so I'm really appreciating the opportunity to celebrate the lives of my family members and the people who I care deeply about, and who I know care deeply about me, and the 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 gift of love and family that we bring to each other. So that's yeah, that's a place of real joy for me these days. Yeah. And it's people of all ages, which is also fun. So one of my siblings, my brother, turned 60 recently, but my grandniece is going to be 4 in a week. And so we're getting to celebrate the generations as well. And today, just a shout out to my sister-in-law, whose birthday is today. So October 1st is a rock star day for her and for all of us that get to know her. So,
Awesome.
what do you miss? What are you missing, and what are you looking forward to?
When this is all over.
Post-pandemic.
I miss travel. I'm looking forward to being back with my community, and worship online is definitely not the same. But I greatly appreciate the people who are still showing up, still trying to create meaning and a sense of the spirit and a sense of connection, even over screens. But yeah, I'm looking forward to being with my community again.
Yeah, me too. I sing in a choir, and I miss singing in a choir. But I also am just I'm also what I miss the actual singing part of it, but I also miss the community part of it. So it'll be good to be back together again. And I'm, and we will be back together again. Yeah.
There is hope.
Yeah, there is hope. Maeve, thanks so much for spending time in this conversation today. It's such a gift and a blessing for me that you're in this work with me, and that we're in this together. And I'm so grateful for you and for all that you bring. And I am I'm going to try to make a plan to meet Bodhi at a distance soon.
That would be great. Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure. And yeah, it's wonderful to have this conversation and hear more about how we feel about the work that we get to do every day.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, stay tuned, friends. There's more time for this all to come week after week. So
Absolutely.
in the meantime, sleep if you need to.
Always a good idea. Thanks, Kathy.
Thanks, Maba.